We're glad that you're spending some of this last beautiful day in November with us. It's gorgeous here in Kansas. Hope you're having great weather wherever you are too. On this last day of November, Chuck's going to talk to us on the topic of managing successful certificate programs. So lots of information that he'll share with us today on that topic. And if you have questions while he's giving his presentation, go ahead and type them in the chat screen for me, and I'll get those questions to Chuck when the time is right. So without further ado, Chuck, are you ready?
I am. So
all right.
We'll get going. Well, folks, thank you much for, again, coming out. It's crazy time of year with wrapping up, and people are doing catalogs and getting brochures ready and wrapping up reporting for the fiscal year. But when you're looking at things that your program can do to help build contacts with students, build enrollments, certificate programs comes into play. And we wanted to kind of reiterate tools that you've got available within ACEware. So wanted to kind of review, again, make sure we have our terminology here, the idea of big C, little c, certificate and certificate program, kind of what they are, what they might look like. I know several of you have certificate programs underway, and we would certainly look forward to maybe doing some sharing spotlights as far as in the newsletter. If you've got some unique parts of a certificate program that you think you'd like to share with other ACEware users, we'd be happy to do a little feature on you in one of our monthly newsletters. So again, why you'd set up a certificate program, some of the rationale that folks use, and then we'll get into what are the tools that you've got within ACEware to manage and operate a certificate program. And then, of course, finally reporting out on the wizard and some tips about general operations. So let's get started. First of all, let's get my mouse so that there we go. What's the difference between a certificate, little c, and a certificate program? And again, the idea, most of us have happy papers, you know, that a person gets for participating in a single class. And that's like a certificate of attendance or a certificate of participation. A certificate program generally requires some tracking of multiple courses or an extensive course. It's more than the typical 2-day program or 4-week evening session. So you typically have multiple courses, there are some verification of attendance, and there may be multiple requirements of courses to take, kind of like your senior, you know, a matriculation or a college degree. You need so many required courses and so many electives. So the idea is that a certificate program, you're going to generally ask a person to take a certain number of courses, 5 out of X or 4 out of so many, or you have to earn a number of hours or CEUs. And again, for those of you that haven't heard the when I was a boy story, really the genesis, the beginning of the Student Manager software was when I was at the University of Nebraska trying to manage a certificate program that used hours. You had to earn 8 CEUs of credits to get a certificate, and we were doing it on 3 by 5 cards. So again, that's really kind of the DNA of the ACEware program, Student Manager, was to help manage certificate programs. So different models, you could say you take X number or N number of courses out of a certain number of courses. A select number, there might be a certain subgroup. You could take X courses out of a whole bunch of courses that aren't necessarily restricted by group. Or the last is the idea of a multi-tiered one, core and an elective. Take N number of courses out of group A, assuming those are required, and then X number of courses out of a group B, which could be your elective courses. The point of it is there is not a single perfect format or structure for a certificate program. It really is something that you would create based on, again, the courses you might have in your existing catalog and the needs of your community. You know, what might be a program area that you'd be able to serve a need in the community. So let's get into the why. Again, many of you do that. I'm going to ask, I know Sharon asked at the head of time, but before we get into the why, let me have you raise your hand. I'm looking at you if you currently offer a certificate program. So again, if you are currently offering a certificate program, raise your hand. I know Leslie does. And again, doesn't have to be very, okay, we've got several of the folks coming in. All right, so we're assuming that some of the rest of you are exploring this. And again, I'm going to ask those of you who are running certificate programs to give Sharon a couple of reasons why you feel you're offering those programs. I'm going to give you some of mine right now. One is to offer your students a more robust learning option. And if you're talking about helping people, helping your participants get jobs, helping your participants earn credentials that they can use for employment, a certificate program generally will carry more weight or more gravitas when a person's taking that into a prospective employer than perhaps a happy paper that says they sat in a class for X number of hours. Number two, and I think this is one, if you haven't already started a certificate program, is that it allows you to toot your horn. If you've been, you know, the same old around town, well, the University of Mugwump, they just offer the same courses day after day after day. If you can come up with a certificate program and identify, here are the courses it includes, here are the requirements, here are the benefits, it really gives you a platform, a soapbox to stand on and remind people that you are a member of the community that can help people live better lives and do their jobs better. And again, so that idea, it gives you an excuse to ramp up the promotional engines. Number two, again, going back to that, it raises awareness of your current catalog. A lot of times, certificate programs can be generated without necessarily creating a bunch of new courses. It's by basically bundling together or repackaging some of your current programs into a sequence and maybe do a little bit more articulation or coordination between the courses in that suite that you're going to promote. And that also gets people to looking at the other courses in your catalog. Because again, most of the time, my experience has been that courses that are part of a certificate are also able to be taken just as one-off courses. And I'm going to go ahead and have you put your hands down again, and I'm going to ask this question. Now, Gene, wait till I answer the question. If you have a certificate program, do you use courses that are open enrollment, or are they restricted just to the certificate? Well, okay, let's rephrase that. Do you use courses in your general catalog as opposed to courses that are specifically for certificates? So if you rebundle existing courses, raise your hand on the certificate. Hopefully, Sharon, can I rephrase that okay, I think people are following that. The idea that someone can take one of those individual courses without being, quote, in the certificate program. And most of you that do certificate programs do that. Okay, what's another reason for this program? Again, it depends on the program again, but some schools will actually create an advisory board or a board of directors or a consulting group to help plan a certificate. And that's one where you might, you'd meet with industry professionals. If you have an HR, you think you got a need for an HR certificate of some kind, you'd call, personnel and HR professionals from SHRM or from various employers, bring them together, talk about the needs in the community, and use that group, that professional group who are in the business, as one of your design help to help you plan it, and also certainly to help you market that. I'm going to try one more time with a little better question now. For those of you with certificate programs, do you have an advisory board for each program or for most of the individual certificates you do? Raise your hand if you have some advisory boards. I see we've got 1, 2, and we got 3 or 4 on that. So again, and that is, again, be aware, and these folks will tell you, that's a lot of work. But the idea of an advisory board or an advisory council to help you, kind of a program planning committee for those of you who have been in the conference business, a program planning committee that would meet, I don't know, 2, 3 times a year to look at, what are the courses you offer in certificate X or Y, and do you need to modify or change or rearrange the method of putting those courses together for you. And again, that's a lot of work, but it can be a productive, it can be a worthwhile effort for your program. And certainly I think the bottom line on that is to sell more soap. The idea of certificate programs is kind of like the Costco or the Sam's Club. You bundle a group of courses together and be able to get someone to enroll in a larger group than just one-off, take a course here, take a course there. So, and again, Sharon, if anybody given any other good reasons why they should start a certificate program that offer their 2 cents on that?
We do. We have a couple that are telling us how their certificate programs are used. Some have some medical certificate programs, and this prepares them for state examinations at the end of that program, which is a great idea. And with working with government agencies, that some of these agencies, once these certificate programs are concluded, they go towards pay increases and promotion. So that's a good thing. That's kind of goes into number 1 there, where it gives it a little more credential than just a paper certificate of completion. So thanks for sharing those ideas.
Super, appreciate it. And if you got others, if you haven't committed on that, if commented, feel free to do so. But the best reason for doing certificate programs is with your student manager program, we really do make it easy for you. And again, back to my initial comment about the birthing of student manager really was to deal with certificate programs. Well, how do you start if you don't have one? And number 1, do you have, or are you going to have an application for the certificate program? I don't see anybody from George Mason here, but I think George Mason actually has an application fee. It's nominal, $25 or something, to say, I want to enroll in a certificate program X. So again, that's one we'll get people to keep them awake on a nice afternoon. If you have a admission fee or an application fee or process for a certificate, raise your hand. I want to see if there's anybody. There are 2 or 3. Again, all right, a few of you do that. Number 2, do you want to have some flag to track people who are in that certificate program? And again, if you have an application course, that's certainly one way to do it. But if you don't, the idea of using an interest code is generally, wrong direction. The idea of using an interest code is usually the best approach for that. What will be the criteria for completion of your certificate? And again, this is the the rigorous of, what amount of, how many hoops do you want these students to jump through? Whether it's just completing courses. Some programs might even have some kind of project, think of it as a mini master's or something with coursework and then some kind of master's program. That'd be the exception. I think most people use just completing a certain number of courses. But this idea of a 2-tier or a 1-tier, do you have core courses and then electives, or do you just have a group of several courses that you have to take a minimum number of? Related to the course sequences, are there prerequisites and will they be enforced? And that's somewhat tangential to the certificate idea, because you could have prerequisites on programs beginning Excel, advanced Excel, etc., that aren't necessarily part of a certificate, but prerequisites are a tool that might be involved in this. And then finally, how you indicate the completers, if you would, the graduates. So again, those are the kind of things that I would think of. And again, if those of you who have walked the walk and already have built them out, if you have other planning warning issues, then certainly pass those along. And back to my comment about advisory boards, obviously, if you're going to have an advisory council, you certainly will have plugged in there some advance notice for, to give your advisory council several months to kind of work out some structure and organization to that certificate program if you're going to involve an external group who is, getting into herding cats as you're trying to manage this planning committee. All right. So let's get down to the nuts of it now. When you're creating a certificate program, and we're going to assume that you're going to have a select number of courses from which to choose, so that you're going to have a program on ACEware proficiency. You're going to just have those courses related to Student Manager, AceWeb, managing registration software, databases, etc., are going to be the courses approved for the program. So what you do is create a grouping code for the certificate program. If you have multiple certificates, you would create a different grouping code for each different certificate. Dirty little secret is that you can have one course be a approved course for multiple certificates. So again, I see no reason why you couldn't have a core foundation class be a course that's eligible toward multiple certificates. And then for the tracking of people who are interested or who are participating in the program, is that you can use interest codes. And again, the idea of an interest code for those students who are in the program to kind of give you a target group to aim at for promotions and, attaboy, or encouraging notes. Hey, everybody, next term comes up, make sure you finish your certificate. Here are courses available. It gives you a place to focus your marketing. Creating grouping codes. If you've got ACEweb, you're familiar with grouping codes. You go to code area, grouping, and then create your code. And again, most of the time you might want it depends. A lot of times you might want these to be internal to the certificate and wouldn't necessarily be related to how you're going to group courses in ACEweb. Assigning grouping codes, again, you assign them to the course. You, of course, if you have ACEweb, would need to have a grouping code that is published, also assigned to that course. Now, you certainly can, and I don't know whether those of you who are running certificate programs use the same grouping code to both indicate a ACEweb category for display and for a set of grouping codes for the certificate program, but you certainly can use the same code for both web display and for certificate tracking. And again, we'll show you ahead of time, we'll show you the certificate wizard that this grouping code is really going to tie into down the road here. So, all right, the interest code for people who are interested in the certificate. Again, make as many certificate or interest codes you want to match up to somebody who's interested in that certificate. And again, on ACEweb, you may not want those displayed. On the other hand, if you wanted to say, you want to say, I'm interested in a certificate on XYZ, you certainly could put that. Where's my pointer down here? You certainly could have this interest code displayed in your ACEweb interest code group. All right. Sharon, I'm going to back up here. Everybody hanging in there so far? Any questions that we ought to deal with?
Everyone is hanging in there just fine, Chuck.
Good. All right. Tracking completers. Now, in the earlier modes, and some of you have been around a while, we've talked about certificates. We talked about having an interest code to indicate a completer. I'm going to, with our new credential tool that came out in 8.0, I'm going to suggest that the better way to do your recognition of someone who's completed the certificate is to use the credential. And so what I would recommend is you create a credential type for each different certificate. And then, of course, when a person has completed that certificate, you'd stamp that credential in their record. And I bent backwards. Here we go. So that at the end of the process, you'd go to this, come on, mouse, slow down. At the end of the process, you'd come to this person's record, and you would add this credential, certificate ACE. It would have a certificate. You're going to typically have an award date on it as the date that you presented it, and you certainly can have an expiration date as well, if these are actual professional certificates that have an expiration on them. That might be an industry certificate. So now, programs that have an enrollment fee. The one big point here about the enrollment fee is that, mouse is tricky, is that you'd want to put the interest code. Make sure that the interest code on this certificate application course, if you would, is the one that matches to the ACEware certificate or whatever the interest code of the certificate, and that'll kind of automatically flag those names. If you don't have an enrollment fee to get into a course or a special application process, you could just add that person's interest code when you have an idea that they're interested in the program. And again, as a suggestion, even if you don't have an admission fee, if there is a voluntary process that a student checks a box, yeah, I'd like to be interested in the program, you could create a course with a zero fee and assign, quote, register people into the application for certificate blah to kind of help manage that for your records. And again, we talked about the completers, putting in a credential when they're done. So assigning the credential, there's a couple of new tools that actually were built for Tri-County, which does a lot with certificates, is that you can use the Make Credential record. And so when you click on a registration, Make Credential, it'll pop up a credential wizard where you can put in the category of the credential, the name of it, if you have a code, a start date, end date, a date awarded, otherwise date, and that will automatically be stamped into the name record. And then brand new, and this is a brand new feature, is to use what's called the stamp cred function. And this is used with a just after, where if you add that just after to a report, and we'll show you that in a bit, every student who's in that report will get a credential stamped into their name record. So again, it's like a mass assignment. It's kind of like the certificate awarding. If you use the stamp cert, or I forget the function, that'll stamp a certificate awarded date onto a person's registration. Okay, moving into course prerequisites. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Moving into course prerequisites, if you have sequence courses that you really do say you have to take number 1 and then number 3 and then number 6 and then number 10 in that order, you can set prerequisites on courses. I'm gonna wake you up again. Raise your hand if you have prerequisites on any of your programs. Prerequisites. Do you have prerequisites on courses? And the answer is you're either sleeping or not very many, just a couple. So, all right. So the idea about prerequisites is that, again, you'll notify the staff member on the web as to whether they've met the requirement. In Student Manager, if you're going to monitor this, you have to go into Preferences, in Register, and enable the Met Prerequisites check. In ACEware, you've got to go into your INI setting and check this cat link status to turn on how it's going to handle prerequisite handling on the website. And then, of course, in Manager, you'd go into the catalog, find the catalog description for the course that has a prerequisite, and add prerequisites by adding the catalog code of the course that needs to be a prerequisite. So again, that's pretty straightforward. Here's the fun part, Certificate Wizard. Now again, I'm going to ask you, how many of you guys have actually used the Certificate Wizard in running certificate reports? You're going to break my heart. Bless you, Janet. All right. All right. Well, golly. All right. Well, we have about 8% of the people here that do that. So we're going to jump right in and give you an idea of what we're talking about with that. So we'll get out of our routine. So what I've done in here is that I've got courses that are part of a certificate program. I have added a certificate code, Cert ACEware, to courses that qualify as the certificate requirement for ACEware proficiency. And people have taken those courses. So when I want to run a report to find out how many people have earned X number of coursework in the certificate program, go to transcripts, and we're going to modify to show you this function. And the secret is that you're going to use, as a query, your query must include grouping code. So you can have it that it includes multiple grouping codes or a single grouping code. So if we wanted a single grouping code, we're going to do our Cert AW, Certificate in ACEware. And transcript will ask you about ended, not ended, include duplicates, don't include duplicates. And here we have the reports. Now you'll note I have two. One that is just the plain Certificate Wizard and one with the stamp credit feature. So we're going to do Certificate Wizard. Now, the way the Certificate Wizard works is that once you have selected a query that has different catalog or different grouping codes in them that relate to the certificate programs, it'll then show you with the drop down what are the certificate groups that you have in this particular report. And what this allows you to do is that if you have a two-tier, so if you have Certificate ACEweb and like Certificate ACE2, which would be ACEweb or required, and Certificate A2 would be elective courses, you could do a two-tier approach. So we're going to start with the base. How do you want to measure that? Do you want to have people who have greater than or equal to, greater than, they're exactly equal to, they have fewer than? So you've got your comparison, and we said we're going to say 4. Have you taken more than 4 classes? Now, the other issue is you could say, do you want to use classes, hours, CEUs, or credits? So if you wanted to, you could say, well, you must have earned 8 CEUs. Or if you wanted to say hours, then you'd do in something like 80 hours of coursework. So you can actually set your parameter here. I'm going to go back to our courses mode. I want 4 courses. And if you have requirements, you could say it has to have a certain grade. It might have to have a certain grade letter. It might have to have an attendance percentage that is greater than to some amount. We're not going to worry about that. So here is the next question. Do you only want to use this criteria? Do you want to have classes from another category? So this would let you do a second grouping category. And if you have that Cert A2 or Cert EX for certificate extra credit, you could add another group of courses in here to be able to check if they've met this, required course, elective course option. We're going to leave that blank. and we're going to go back to only use criteria number 1. And then again, skip names with credential title equal. So that is where you can exclude the students who would have already earned the certificate. So you're not creating a certificate report for your graduates once you've been in this program for a while. All right, let's let her rip and see what happens. We're going to choose everybody who has taken a certificate course, but we only want to report those who have taken 4 or more classes. And let's go. 47 records met the first criteria, 10 students met the next. This is your modifier report. And if you can see at the top, let me make that bigger, 12. Just do it equals CertWiz. That's what you'd add to your report to do this. And again, if you don't have this particular report, this certificate report, let your tech know. It's actually in the demo that you could get it and import it into your system. So what we've got here are 10 people who have taken 4 or more classes that are in the ACE cert or the cert ACEW report area. All right, Sharon, what questions do we have? And I'm going to show while you're asking another routine. Go ahead.
Well, we have a question from somebody wanting to know if you have a single course that is in multiple certificate programs, can that be stamped? Can the single course be stamped for more than one certificate program, credential program?
That's a policy that you guys would need to apply. I would be of the impression that you could use it. Again, if you had a whole lot of courses, then you begin to get into students double dipping. I think that's a policy that you guys could enforce. If you have only a few courses that are that way, I don't think that would be much of an issue. If over half of the courses in your portfolio are setting under multiple related certificates, you've got to watch. That begins to give the appearance of a diploma mill. You know, you got to look at, consider kind of your quality image in the community as to how far you want to go with that. I would think that having 1 or 2 courses that might be your seminal, basic computer operations or intro to Excel or, basic database, management, might be some courses that would be multiple certificate easy. And as long, I would just say, as long as you're not overdoing this, basically you're getting the same project for multiple benefits, that you don't feel like you're diluting your quality. Does that, Sharon, what do you want to add to that? Or
No, I would agree with that, and there's probably very few that have the same course in several certificate programs, I would think.
And it's a kind of like a, not overdoing, if it fits and makes sense to the program, I think that's certainly acceptable. It's just that, if you had 5 courses in Certificate A that are the same as 5 courses out of the 6 in Certificate B, then you might be able to, that might be a little bit of an issue. And again, let's think about if you're trying to encourage people to take more of your courses, you're going to want to try to separate the courses out enough so that one student would need to take, several new courses in order to earn that certificate. So, all right, we're going to run. Well, any other questions right now, Sharon, on that?
Not at this time.
We're going to run it one more time, showing you that stamp cred option. So we're going to go back to the grouping code, and we're going to say, well, what am I going to do? I was going to try to give an example, a cert. Let's use just the single one. We won't get confused on that. Courses that haven't ended, and now I'm going to do stamp credit. Well, the same process applies. We're going to say I'm going to say if 5 classes is a completer. So if you've taken 5 or more classes, you are win the bingo. All right, so we got 5 classes in there. 31 courses, 6 students met the requirement. So here are the 6, Jason, Jeff, Charles, Mike, close the report, and here is stamped credential. If you continue, all names in this report will get the credential, ACEware proficiency, cert AEW, dated today. Hit the OK button, 6 credentials added. There's a little bit of a hiccup on the Xing out, but if we look up Jason Allen now and go to his credential, now I added it earlier when I was testing, so we've got him in there twice, but this automatically stamped this credential into his record, and the next time we were to go to run credentials, we could say ignore the ACEware proficiency certificate group when I'm doing the credential. So, all right, well, that's to me, that's the big take home. If you haven't been using the certificate wizard and you are using the credential or the grouping codes, that I think it really would give you some tremendous tools. Other reporting functions just kind of in the process here. These are some other functions in the function toolkit that lets you do some analysis of certificate programs, grad report, find int, find group, grad spec, grad cred. So I'm going to open up to questions. Any other general questions about the certificate management? I had a thought and it went away, but the typical thing. We zipped right through this.
I'm not seeing
a whole lot on that. I wanted to get back to the manager, and I was getting certificate. The certificate wizard. One of the other things, and again, let's go back with the assumption that you have a certificate program where a student has to take 5 out of this group of courses to attend it. What you can do with the wizard, and this is I should have it in the PowerPoint, but I don't, is that if you want to run a report for, again, this grouping code, and we're going through the process, the standard certificate wizard, and we want to say certificate wizard greater than 4. And then we're going to say here, return the names in certificate criteria 1 that are missing one or more of the main classes. So if we were to say that there were a group of classes, and this is based on the catalog code, ACE 010, see if I can remember, ACE 100, ACE 102. So basically what you're doing, and I'll show, we're going to bring up the function key here. View all courses, no date range. So mastering student manager is ACE 10A, student manager ACE 101. What else do we have? Student manager certificate, processing credit cards ACE 102. So I have 100. Let's think it's 101. So you put in your different catalog codes for the courses that are in your core group, and you could have 10, 12 of those, you know, comma separated. So what it's going to do, it will bring up people who have taken, well, actually want to do this less than 5. We'll say we want to do everybody who has not completed all 5 courses, and show us here are the people that have not completed the courses. And these are students that you could send them an email to say, hey, you've got courses in your certificate program that are coming up this next term. Get your butt in the class and take them. So you can also use this to promote classes that are upcoming to people that are participating in the certificate program. And again, this is a report of a certificate or of a transcript mode, but you could certainly export the emails out of this, add a export tool, export the emails out of this and use that in promotions for, to get people to come in and participate in those certificate programs. So that's what I wanted to cover. I knew I had something there. Well, Sharon, questions? Everybody doing okay?
Everybody's doing okay.
Very good. Well, again, next month, we're going to be talking about the course bundling or the course packaging module. So what better analogy but open up the package under your tree with course packaging. It is an optional module. I know many of you do have that. And so we're going to take a look at that, kind of tying into the Christmas theme, to open that present and try to, again, sell more courses for you guys out there. So, Sharon, I guess I'm ready to wrap it up and head out to this nice weather outside here in Kansas.
Yep, I don't blame you a bit. No, I don't see any other questions.
Very good.
I think we're all just ready to get to work and get to
working on that. Yes, and if you have questions about how those might work for you, feel free to give me or Sharon a note, a call, and we'd be happy to help you out. And again, great set of tools in Manager to help you manage it. You just got to plug it in and use it. So, all right, guys, we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.